Good morning, fifth grade. Today we're going to continue reading in Esperanza, and we're going to start with chapter 2. Before we get started, we want you to turn to chapter 3, and it says, reread the last paragraph of chapter 3. Draw a picture of what Esperanza is thinking and write a caption for your picture. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. It says, who is Esperanza? What character traits best describe her? And our focus standard for today is analyzing text details to make inferences about the main character. Our vocabulary words are superstition, and that's when someone believes in, the supernatural. They believe in good luck and bad luck. And then premonition is a strong feeling that you have about something. So you can have a premonition if you're thinking, oh man, I think something bad is about to happen. That's a premonition. And then the last word is serenade. And that's a piece of music that's sung. Usually people are outside or they're going to visit someone and they serenade. So if you go Christmas caroling, that's an example of serenading. All right? So this picture would match premonition. This lady looks like she has a bad feeling. She's in a graveyard. The next picture would represent superstition. People think Friday the 13th is bad luck. They think black cats are bad luck, but four-leaf clovers are good luck. That's superstition. And then the last one is serenade. This boy is singing to this girl on the balcony. He's serenading her. Go ahead and turn the page, and as we're reading out loud in our text, we want to use our CSPS strategy. So we're on page 4. The title is Las Uvas, or Grapes, and this is 6 years later. So Esperanza is around 12 years old. All right, go ahead and underline 6 years later. That gives us information about the setting. Papa handed Esperanza the knife. The short blade was curved like a scythe, its flattened wooden handle fitting snugly in her palm. This job was usually reserved for the eldest son of a wealthy rancher. But since Esperanza was an only child and Papa's pride and glory, she was always given the honor. Last night she had watched Papa sharpen the knife back and forth across the stone, so she knew the tool was edged like a razor. Cuidate los dedos, said Papa. Watch your fingers. The August sun promised a dry afternoon in Aguas Calientes, Mexico. Everyone who lived and worked at El Rancho de las Rosas was gathered at the edge of the field. Esperanza's family, the house servants in their long white aprons, the vaqueros already sitting on their horses ready to ride out to the cattle, and 50 or 60 campesinos, straw hats in their hands, holding their own knives ready. They were covered top to bottom in long-sleeve shirts, baggy pants tied at the ankles with string, and bandanas around their foreheads and necks to protect them from the sun, dust, and spiders. Esperanza, on the other hand, wore a light silk dress that stopped above her summer boots and no hat. On top of her head, a wide satin ribbon was tied with a big bow and tails trailing in her long black hair. The clusters were heavy on the vine and ready to deliver. Esperanza's parents, Ramona and Sixto Ortega, stood nearby. Mama, tall and elegant, her hair in the usual braided wreath that crowned her head, and Papa, barely taller than Mama, his graying mustache twisted up at the sides. He swept his hand toward the grapevine, signaling Esperanza. When she walked toward the arbors and glanced back at her parents, they both smiled and nodded, encouraging her forward. When she reached the vines, she separated the leaves and carefully grasped the thick stem. She put the knife to it, and with a quick swipe, the heavy cluster of grapes dropped into her waiting hand. All right, we'll stop right there because we have information about our character and our setting. And we know that it's the first day of harvest, and it's because Esperanza is the only child of her parents. She gets to cut off the first cluster of grapes, and it's like a ceremony that happens every year as a way to like signal that the harvest has begun, and it's this really exciting time on El Rancho de las Rosas. Okay? And so for our character, we would underline these last sentences on page 5 that says, when she reached the vines, she separated the leaves and carefully grasped the thick stem. She put the knife to it, and with a quick swipe, the heavy cluster of grapes dropped into her waiting hand. This sentence tells us that Esperanza has the honor of cutting the first vine to begin the harvest each year. In box 1, you would write, Esperanza has the honor of cutting the first vine to begin harvest each year. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And you would write down this quote that we underlined on page 5 in the second part of box 1. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the setting. And we know that if we look in the bottom paragraph on page 4, it's August in Aguascalientes, Mexico. She's on El Rancho de las Rosas in the field, and it's 6 years later, so she's 12, almost 13 years old. Make sure you have all of this underlined, and in box 2, we would write, Esperanza is at the edge of the field of El Rancho de las Rosas on a dry August afternoon in Aguascalientes, Mexico. She is almost 13 years old. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. You can write down these 2 sentences on page 4 that we have underlined. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. We're on page 6. Esperanza walked back to Papa and handed him the fruit. Papa kissed it and held it up for all to see. La cosecha, said Papa, harvest. Ole, ole! The crowd echoed around them. The campesinos, the field workers, spread out over the land and began the task of reaping the fields. Esperanza stood between Mama and Papa with her arms linked into theirs and admiring the activity of the workers. Poppy, this is my favorite time of year, she said, watching the brightly colored shirts of the workers slowly moving among the arbors. Wagons rattled back and forth from the fields to the big barns where the grapes were being stored until they went to the winery. Is the reason because when the picking is done, it will be someone's birthday and time for a big fiesta? Papa asked. Esperanza smiled. When the grapes delivered their harvest, she always turned another year. This year she would be 13. The picking would take 3 weeks, and then, like every other year, Mama and Papa would host a fiesta for the harvest and for her birthday. Marisol Rodriguez, her best friend, would come with her family to celebrate. Her father was a fruit rancher, and they lived on the neighboring property. Even though their houses were acres apart, they met every Saturday beneath the holm oak on the rise between the 2 ranches. Her other friends, Chita and Barina, would be at the party too, but they lived farther away and Esperanza didn't see them as often. Their classes at St. Francis didn't start again until after the harvest, and she couldn't wait to see them. When they were all together, they talked about one thing, their quinceañeras, the presentation parties they would have when they turned 15. They still had 2 more years to wait, but so much to discuss. The beautiful white gowns they would wear, the big celebrations where they would be presented, and the sons of the richest families who would dance with them. After their quinceañeras, they would be old enough to be courted, marry, and become las patronas, the heads of their household. Turn the page. rising to the position of their mothers before them. Esperanza preferred to think, though, that she and her someday husband would live with Mama and Papa forever, because she couldn't imagine living anywhere but El Rancho de las Rosas, or with any fewer servants, or without being surrounded by people who adored her. Okay, we'll stop right there, because as Esperanza is thinking about her upcoming birthday, her mind wanders to the future, and she's like, when I'm 15, like, I'm gonna have my quinceañera, and then like a nice boy is going to like date me, and then we're gonna get married. And she's thinking like she doesn't really want to leave her family. She wants to live with her parents forever. And so her problem is that, underline this sentence, she can't imagine living anywhere else but El Rancho de las Rosas. She's kind of having one of those moments where she's like, ooh, I don't want to grow up. Like, I want to be with my parents forever. All right, and so in box 3, you would write, Esperanza cannot imagine living without her mother and father at El Rancho de las Rosas when she gets married. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And for the quote, we would write down this sentence that we have underlined for our problem. Because she couldn't imagine living anywhere other than El Rancho de las Rosas. All right, and Esperanza tries to solve her problem by thinking, well, like, even if I do get married, I can probably still live with my parents, right? And so in box 4, we would write, Esperanza, she doesn't solve her problem, but she thinks about living with her parents forever. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And for the quote, we would write down this sentence at the top of page 8. Esperanza preferred to think, though, that she and her someday husband would live with Mama and Papa forever. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the paragraph. It says, describe Esperanza's role in the harvest. What do these details reveal about her life? So you'll want to go back to pages 4 and 5 and use your boxes from the character and the setting to kind of figure out what's her job during the harvest and what does that tell you about her family.